In the second half of today's show, we'll be joined by former Congressman Adam Kinzinger. But first, Americans and Iranians are dying in the Middle East for absolutely no good reason whatsoever, and it's high time we get a lot more outraged about it. The right wing has gone absolutely around the bend getting angry about the historical inaccuracy of a movie about a fictional story involving monsters and ancient gods. We'll unpack their motivations for trying to make this a thing. Welcome back to the podcast for the 54% of Americans who vote for progress and want to convince their friends and family members to join our majority.
All right. Well, big news this week is that we lost 3 service members in an Iranian attack on a Jordanian American airbase.
It is actually 4 as of this morning.
Well, then there was a 4th, which was in Iraq.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
So,
my bad. Sorry. Let Ravi deliver the news.
Sorry.
Know your place.
So the 4th was in Iraq. I think it was controlled detonation of a Iranian drone that went awry. So that's 4 this week. That hasn't stopped the administration from continuing to spin. Here's Stephen Miller on Fox News.
We're not going to wake up in a morning where Iran has a nuclear weapon and the capacity to use it against American citizens. We're going to deal with this here. We're going to deal with it now, and we're going to do whatever it takes. And the results have been very clear. The regime has been eviscerated militarily, financially, politically, in every possible way. And that off-ramps there anytime they want it to make a deal and to honor and abide by that deal. But if they think they can cross America and get away with it, they and everyone watching around the world is learned a very clear lesson about America and President Trump, Sean.
You know, look, there clearly is a power struggle that's on.
They keep saying whatever it takes, Ravi. They keep saying whatever it takes. And again, I am no advocate of sending in ground troops. But if we're being honest about what it takes to achieve the objectives they've set out in this war, it would require holding the ground. So they are not going to do whatever it takes, which makes you ask, 1, what would be the point of it if we were? But 2, especially what is the point of it if you're not even doing what it takes to achieve the objectives that I don't think are worth blood trying to achieve in the first place?
Well, I think The Onion summed it up best with 2 different headlines here. One is the U.S. suffers additional casualties in war. One last week. The second, which is my personal favorite, is Trump warns Iran to accept his ultimatum or face wrath of next ultimatum.
Nails it.
So Trump posted on Truth Social a graphic about the amount of Americans dead in this war versus previous wars. Korean War, Vietnam War, Iraq War, Afghanistan War. I'm not sure his head is in the game, Jason, on what's going on here. I'm not sure he's reading the American public. My sense, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that the American public doesn't want any dead, doesn't want any money spent, doesn't want this war. That's my perception. I'm not sure this message that we have fewer casualties than other wars that he explicitly ran as he ran as the anti-war candidate. He was ostensibly against those wars, although how much we can't be certain.
It's important to remember that he posted this as a reaction to the 4 American service members being killed.
Right.
So imagine you're one of their family members and you learn that your loved one has been killed in action in this war. And the president's response is to de-emphasize the importance of them and to, in fact, try to dismiss the relevance of their death by simply saying, well, look, it's by the numbers, not that big of a deal. It's a humongous deal.
Yeah. There was yet another interesting exchange involving Senator Ossoff, this time with Pete Hegseth, who just in general is noticeably more subdued in every clip I saw of this hearing. And Laura Rosen from Politico, I think, gave us the reason why. Said that Hegseth is toned it down because he needs to get a pretty significant appropriation from the Senate. So he's on his best behavior. He's way less defiant. But I thought Ossoff pushed Hegseth in a very interesting way. Let's take a look at this.
already said Iran's military was destroyed and combat ineffective. You said, quote, Operation Epic Fury was a historic and overwhelming victory. You said Iran's military had been rendered, quote, combat ineffective for years to come. And you stated we had, quote, achieved every single objective. Were those accurate statements?
It certainly was, on behalf of the men and women in uniform, a historic military victory over Iran.
Had Iran's military been rendered, quote, combat ineffective for years to come? That was a statement that you made 4 months ago.
They had 160 naval vessels
You need
in
to
the
answer
Blue
the
Water
questions,
Navy,
Mr.
and they're gone.
Secretary.
Their Air Force
You
is
said 4 months
completely
ago.
combat
You
ineffective,
said
and they don't
4
have a
months
defense
ago.
industrial base.
Excuse
So
me, Mr.
describe to me a
Secretary.
country that doesn't have an Air Force, a Navy, or a defense industrial base, and
Mr.
I will describe to
Secretary.
you a country that does not have an effective
Mr.
military.
Secretary, you
It can
stated-
lob missiles.
Mr. Secretary, you stated
missiles,
4
but it's
months
not a
ago
combat
that
effective
Iran's
military.
military had been rendered, quote, combat ineffective for years to come. Has Iran's military been, for the last 4 months, combat ineffective?
It's been set back not just years, but likely decades.
Okay. We need to talk about what combat ineffective means. It is a doctrinal term in the military, and to be combat ineffective means that you must be removed from the field because your unit can no longer effectively carry on the fight. You can no longer engage in combat and must be replaced. You must be pulled off the line and someone must come in to replace you. That's what it means when a unit is combat ineffective in the military. So 4 months ago, Pete Hegseth said that the military, the entire military of Iran, was no longer capable of continuing to fight or to defend itself at all. And so now he's trying to come up with ways when talking to Senator Ossoff as to how technically that might be correct. He's probably right that their Air Force is pretty combat ineffective at this point, as long as you don't consider aerial drone attacks part of air combat. If you don't, then I guess that is correct if you're just talking about a conventional Air Force. But clearly, the fact that we are still engaged in a war and still taking casualties, they are in fact not combat ineffective, and it's every bit as bad as George W. Bush landing on the aircraft carrier and declaring it mission accomplished.
Well, we have this other piece of news here, which is that the Saudis reached a new, this was like little reported, I think, but the Saudis reached a deal to allow them to enrich uranium with the help of the U.S. and U.S. companies. This kind of flew under the radar. It comes also shortly after the U.S. explicitly greenlit the UAE to buy advanced chips, or is it the UAE or Qatar? Let's take a look at this quickly. It's the UAE to buy advanced AI chips from NVIDIA and other U.S. companies. And the UAE deal was explicitly in return for the UAE's cooperation and assistance with the U.S. in the Iran war. I think this combination, buttresses my point the other week about isolationism. Like, I don't know how much of the politicking we've got going on in the Middle East is in America's interests, like any of this stuff.
I wouldn't even call it isolationism in the Middle East, because it's what you're talking about is more like a strategic disengagement from the Middle East. But one thing is for certain is that Saudi Arabia, oil-rich Saudi Arabia, does not need to enrich uranium for the purposes of generating power.
Right.
For its people. This is not an energy policy.
Right.
And look, they are two different regimes. Not to say that, they're both pretty brutal to their own people in a lot of ways. Right. One is just frankly more stable than the other, and therefore probably has less cause for brutality, or less frequent cause for it, because it has a little bit firmer grip. In most ways, I would say Iran is more westernized as a culture. But the difference is simply our strategic alignment with them. That's the only difference. We shouldn't forget the role that Saudi Arabia played in 9/11. And we're just going to not pay attention to the fact that they want to enrich uranium. What happens when there's a regime change one day in that country if they have nuclear weapons?
Yeah, I think the legacy of Trump will be a nuclear-rich Middle East. There he's rattling sabers about hitting this mountain. What is it called? It's called Pickaxe Mountain. Is this mountain where Iran apparently has moved a lot of its nuclear material, and apparently you can't hit it with conventional weapons. So I think like their failures in Iran are making a nuclear Iran more likely. The fact that they ripped up the Obama nuclear deal makes that more likely. We already know that Israel already has nuclear weapons. It looks like they're pretending like this is for civilian purposes, but as you pointed out, it makes no sense otherwise. And there's no evidence whatsoever that Trump has any long-term calculus whatsoever. So I think there's a wink and a nod here that this is going to be the Saudi development of a nuclear weapon. I'm sure the UAE and Qatar will follow soon. And then what's to stop anybody else here? And that's just where we are. And I think like when you talk about like isolationism or strategic disengagement, I'd rather, like, if this is where we're going, right, which is a nuclear armed mess of a Middle East, I would rather it happen without our assistance than with our assistance. Like, because right now we're pretending like this is our objective. We're fighting wars over it while we're actually making it more likely. So for me, I would prefer a world in which we're not involved at all. And if people are going to arm themselves, I'd rather them do it through other alliances and other processes that don't involve killed Americans, the corrupting of our political system, or us shipping critical American technology over to despots and dictators who seem to think they can manipulate our elections.
Yeah, I think there's a really solid argument for taking a two-pronged approach to the Middle East, which is to say the money that we're currently spending on a war in the Middle East and that we frequently spend on military engagements in the Middle East, you take that and you put that entirely into true energy independence, not just on oil, but on all types of energy in the United States, so that you don't have, by any stretch, an economic reason to have to engage the Middle East. And then as far as Israel, you require that Israel behave in a way that truly is purely in a self-defense manner for their own existence. And when they demonstrate that, which is not what they're doing now, and when they demonstrate that that's what they're doing, then you consider providing assistance for them to do that. Not with personnel on the ground, not with any of the stuff we're doing in Iran, but potentially as an ally, you would want to help them if they need help funding that, but only if it is truly only for self-defense, right? And you would potentially pick other countries like that for moral reasons, right? That you might help financially for self-defense, just the same way we do with many other countries around the world. But that's a strategic engagement. That is not an all-in, our entire economy rests on what happens in this region, and we are overly engaged for political reasons at home.
Yeah, I'm sick of looking at these countries where we're doing everything possible to bend over backwards for them, and they're treating us like the little brother, right? Whether it's killing Khashoggi or disrespect, what Netanyahu did to both Biden and Obama, or how all of them just openly and brazenly engage in our elections and in our civil society. They treat us like we're the junior partner in these relationships, and a lot of these countries, would be in existential peril if it wasn't for the U.S. So they say. So, to me, it's an ultimatum. It's like either back off and respect our country, and that means both political parties. That means every regime, every administration you deal with, and it also means staying away from our elections and not pushing on any open wounds of propensity for corruption that we happen to have in our country. Like, don't do it. Like, stay away. I would have a much different feeling about it if they backed off. Yeah.
And by the way, imagine you dial back that military spending in the region and you focus on energy independence, and then you actually bring foreign aid levels and US aid participation back to the levels it was pre-Trump zeroing it all out. But then you can go further because you freed up so much money for it. All of a sudden now you're engaged in the Middle East in a way similar to how we were engaged, say, in Africa, where you're providing aid.
Yeah.
You're trying to make life better. What you don't get out of Africa in any way the same propensity you get out of the Middle East, you don't get a lot of groups in Africa dedicated to committing terrorism against the United States in the United States, because, look, we should be way more involved in Africa than we have been in the past, as in regards to foreign aid and assistance. But because of the way that we've been engaged there, simply because they don't have oil the same way, they don't have a resource that we need, so we don't send the military. We're far more likely to send the Peace Corps and people like that, and the US aid. You have a much warmer feeling toward the United States in Africa. And if we were to spend the money on becoming truly energy independent, you'd be able to do that to a much greater degree in the Middle East, which would change our relationship with the people of the Middle East.
Well, yeah, I think there was this turning point in both Africa and in Latin America to an extent where we stopped, the CIA mainly, stopped pushing for regime change. Like this is true of Arbenz in Latin America, or in the Congo with Lumumba. There's very credible evidence that the United States ousted democratically elected regimes, or at least participated in it. But those days are long gone, and the period you're talking about, which is a largely aid-driven, mostly benevolent, maybe self-interested too, but benevolent engagement up until Trump, right? Like, as Trump is now talking about Congo and trying to extort these countries out of their minerals and resources, it's just not getting a lot of attention. But that sort of interstitial period you're talking about was better for everybody. In the less we cared about what the leader was in any one country and stopped getting involved, the better everybody was, in my opinion, because we were doing more harm. There's always an argument that you could make that, like, if you lived in so-and-so country, wouldn't you want the United States to intervene and install a better leader? Like, maybe, but the history shows us that the United States almost always screws this up. Like, we are not good at picking other countries' leaders. It almost always winds up bad.
Well, you would maybe want us to intervene, but you know what you would want before that? Clean water, access to trade, an opportunity. And you can do that oftentimes without overthrowing a regime.
Right. Well, one other, this is not directly related, but it's on the foreign policy front. Laura Loomer, who is widely viewed as a Trump whisperer, went to Ukraine, and she had this very interesting tweet. I'll read it for you. Just experienced my first air raid in Ukraine. Sirens blaring. This is every day for every Ukrainian. I feel like such an asshole for minimizing the struggle of Ukrainians for the last 5 years. I often said I don't care. Looking back, that wasn't very nice of me to say. There are people in Ukraine who have to run to a bomb shelter every day, and some of us had the audacity to say Russia wasn't wrong because we believed the lie that Ukraine is a country full of Nazi sympathizers. We have been so propagandized by Russia, and we don't even realize it. Air sirens could very well be the future of America if we don't start demanding our lawmakers crack down on communism and multipolarity. We won't have Trump forever, and the axis of evil is moving fast. I mean, there's a lot of interesting stuff in that tweet.
Yeah, I mean, I was with her until the end, where she was like, what I learned from this is we have to crack down on politicians like Zoran Mamdani. That's what I took from that. But at least she also took from it that Russia is actually the bad guy. You know what this reminds me of?
What do you think multipolarity? I get the communism part. What does she mean by multipolarity?
I literally do not know what that word means.
Yeah.
We can perhaps look it up.
Well, I know in literal sense it means that there are multiple superpowers. But okay, so Jeremy's saying China, USA, Russia dominance. Yeah, so multipolarity means that there are multiple superpowers. But
okay,
what does that mean? What are we going to do about China's dominance? I don't get it.
I don't know. I guess that's what the communism. So maybe she's not talking about internal stuff, which would be better. Look,
yeah.
Here's what this.
I do think there might not be a coded U.S. domestic element to this. I think
good. I read it wrong, and that makes me feel better. I'll tell you what this.
I'm not saying for sure because she's a nut, so I don't want to attach myself in any way to her sincerity.
Here's what it reminds me of. As listeners of the show know, though I was a lawyer when I was in the Army, I didn't go in as a lawyer. I went as an intelligence officer, and before I deployed to Afghanistan, while I was in intelligence training, the JAG officer, which is like the Army lawyer, came in to brief the new intelligence officers and like give us advice on how to best utilize the JAG officer, or like the legal advisor that would be assigned to our unit when we got downrange to Afghanistan or Iraq. And he came in, and his advice was, as soon as you get there, get your JAG officer outside the wire so that he or she can experience being in danger, being, actually exposed and out there. And what his argument was, if you do that, they will act less like a super small c conservative, unwilling to let you do your job and try and actually be effective lawyer. Because it's always easier in any context for a lawyer to just say no than it is to actually try and find an answer as to how you can operate. And he was like, just get them outside the wire, and they will be much more sympathetic to those of you who are trying to achieve something, and much less likely to just say no to everything you want to do. And this is what that reminds me of, is Laura Loomer. Yeah. It was easy for her to sit back and say, it's no big deal. Who cares? Russia's not even the bad guy. And then you go spend a few days in Ukraine dodging actual munitions coming from Russia, and suddenly your opinion changes pretty quick.
Well, when we come back, we're going to talk about the Odyssey and the controversy around that, plus some continued debating, fighting perhaps, about the future of the Democratic Party. And we're going to welcome former Congressman Adam Kinzinger as well. We'll be right back.
If a genie gave me 3 wishes, I would use all of them to wish for my family's cat to live forever. But since genies don't exist, as far as I know, we feed our cat Smalls. Smalls is fresh, human-grade cat food that does so much more than just feed your cat. It helps them live a full, healthy life. Most cat food out there is made with meat byproducts, cheap fillers, and artificial ingredients, basically stuff that isn't great for your cat. Big pet food does this because it's cheaper to make. But what they save on cost, your cat pays for with their health. Smalls is different. The fresh recipes are made with at least 80% animal protein, and they're gently cooked to retain all their nutrients and flavor. And they never add filler or artificial ingredients, and their food is so healthy that 88% of cat parents say that after feeding their cat Smalls, their cats have better digestion, a softer and shinier coat, and more energy to play because it's actually good for cats. Your cat's health and longevity starts with what they eat. Try Smalls and get 60% off your cat's first order, plus free shipping and free treats for life when you go to smalls.com/majority54. One last time, that's 60% off your first order, plus free shipping and free treats for life when you head to smalls.com/majority54. Remember when summer used to feel slower, happier even? Somebody forgot to tell the news, which is exactly why more people are becoming a lot more intentional about how they decompress. That's where IndaCloud fits in. IndaCloud is a fully legal online cannabis dispensary for gummies, exotic flower, premium pre-rolls, zero sugar THC sodas, energy gummies, and extra strength sleep gummies. Everything is federally legal, hemp THC, lab tested, and shipped discreetly to your door, because staying informed is important, but feeling emotionally overheated 24/7, that part is optional. IndaCloud has a great variety. Energy gummies for surviving overloaded summer schedules, THC sodas for staying social without overheating yourself, extra strength sleep gummies for fully shutting your brain down at night, and flower for slowing the evening down intentionally. The world may stay overheated, but your nervous system doesn't have to. If you're 21 or older, go to indacloud.co, that's CO, not .com, and use the code MAJORITY for 30% off your first subscription order. That's indacloud.co, code MAJORITY for 30% off, delivered routinely and discreetly to your door, plus free gifts and free shipping on qualifying orders. And don't forget to fill out the quick survey when you order to support the show. Enjoy responsibly, and huge thanks to IndaCloud for helping everybody slow the noise down a little bit this summer.
So, Jason, have you had a chance to see the Odyssey yet?
I haven't, but I hear it's amazing.
I mean, so my experience with this is I go to see it on Friday, and hard to get tickets, by the way, to any show, not just IMAX. So I went in the middle of the afternoon on Friday, and it was a packed theater. not an empty seat in the entire house at 3 p.m. on a Friday. And I went in not knowing there was any controversy whatsoever, right? So I'm just like, all right. And I actually, there's some, Nolan movies I don't like. I love some of them. Like I loved Inception. I loved the Batman movies. I loved Memento. Less of a fan of Oppenheimer and Tenet and those types of movies, right? So I go in and I walk out and I'm like, I have like an emotional reaction to this film, and I post on Instagram the following video.
So I just watched the Odyssey.
Yeah, well, I think I must have gone through puberty or something last week.
I think we had some audio issues. Do you want to just summarize?
Yeah, I'll just tell you what I said, which is people go to at Ravi Gupta to see it, but I come out and I was like, look, this movie was incredible. I said that it was kind of like the never-ending story for adults, for those of you who are old enough to know what the never-ending story is. And I said it was the closest thing to seeing on film what it's like to take a lot of shrooms. So I posted that, and I kind of, went off to dinner and all that. And over the course of the next couple hours, there is no video, Jason, that I have ever posted, whether it's when I criticize Hassan Piker or the Plattner stuff or Biden needs to drop out stuff. There is nothing I've posted that has elicited the kind of trolling that this video did, where people are accusing me of being paid to say this is a video that has 94% on Rotten Tomatoes, some equivalent on Metacritic, grossed 200 million plus its opening weekend, but somehow the studio is paying me to say, that this is a good movie. And so I started responding to people, just being like, hey, here's my receipt. I wasn't paid for this. It was just obviously not my friends. They're just random people who came out of nowhere. And people are still not convinced in my mentions. And I'm like, what is going on here? And then I started to look into it. Turns out there's a huge political controversy over this. How much of this has hit has hit your doorstep that you're aware of?
Just in the last few days, I've seen I haven't seen it from anybody who I didn't think had a vested interest in creating the controversy. So it like the stuff about I forget the name of the actor. Is it Elliot Page?
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Elliot Page, or is it Lupita Nyong'o? I don't know how you pronounce her name.
Yeah.
I've seen that stuff come up, but I haven't actually seen, sometimes you can tell when a controversy is real because like friends of yours are commenting on it or are sharing videos by these commentators who are trying to troll it. But all I've seen are reports. I've seen headlines about the controversy because Ben Shapiro said X or Matt Walsh said X, but I haven't actually seen it break through into like regular people in any way caring about it. Even regular people who usually would disagree with me about things in my feed. I'm not seeing it. Feels manufactured to me.
I thought it was mostly manufactured too. And Elon Musk, just for people who are so their awareness, he jumped into this. He says, before this year ends, Grok Imagine will make a full-length movie of the Odyssey that is historically accurate and true to the art of Homer. He then also responded to somebody who suggested that Mel Gibson make a version of this. I wasn't sure what was going on either. And then I texted my thread of Staten Island friends. It's kind of split politically. And I got a very cold reaction from a lot of people who would otherwise like these type of epic movies. Like when we were growing up, Braveheart was great. And then somebody even came out and asked me eventually about Page. And so it definitely hit them. And this would be the prime, audience for this type of movie.
But what I'm wondering is so it seems to me that what's happening is there's a vested interest for the Matt Walshes of the world to exercise this reflective power thing. Oh, this is going to be the biggest story in the country in the entertainment world this week. How do I be a part of the story? This is how I'd be.
They did this with Barbie. Yeah,
right. Exactly. And then the secondary part of that is the political folks who have something to gain from trying to get a few more rounds out of the culture war that helped them win the 24 election with the midterms coming up, going, okay, let's try and ramp this up and make this something. And so I can see where then with like your more Republican leaning Staten Island friends, where that would shape their view of whether they're going to see the movie. But I wonder whether it would have occurred to them to be upset about it at all otherwise.
The answer is absolutely not. The reason why is because I'm fairly sensitive to any political message in a movie, even if I agree with it. So if I think a movie is trying to spoon feed me a message, even if it's one I like, I immediately notice it and I do not like it. Unless it is so perfectly calibrated, but I still notice it. When I was watching this movie, I didn't notice anything. Maybe at the end, there's like some general comments at the end. And actually, funny, this is not what people have seized on, but at the end of the movie, there's some general anti-fascist language. And the only person I found who had anything to say about that was Ben Shapiro, who actually was somewhat supportive of that message. It's not noticeable that there's anything going on because it's not there. And so let me kind of enumerate what's going on. Number one is the Elliot Page casting. So that's just a straight up. We've gone from the argument about trans participation in sports and that being unfair in sports, right? Which I think is a very important debate that I have witnessed in many quote unquote normal corners of America where people have good faith disagreements about what's fair or not, to the Bud Light version of the story, which is trans people can exist in any way in our commercial and artistic life. That's where they want to go. Right. And that is clearly what's going on here, which is that, Elliot Page, who I think, people can argue about how minor or major that part was. It was minor, but does it matter? Like whether it was minor or major, to me, it didn't take me out of the movie. I don't think that trans people should be blacklisted in Hollywood. And the idea that one person in what I think was a relatively minor part is going to get your back up, to me, seems rather silly.
Do I understand correctly that Elliot Page played a very minor role as a soldier
in
the film, right?
Yeah, okay. A soldier who shows up in like 2 scenes in the movie.
So just so I understand, their objection is that Elliot Page, who prior to transitioning and becoming a trans man was Ellen Page, I believe, right? Mm-hmm. Who everyone agreed was a pretty spectacular actor.
Mm-hmm.
And now Elliot Page is a trans man playing a very small role in this. So this person who nobody argues is anything other than a really spectacular talent is a trans man playing a male soldier in a small role, and people are upset. Like, it just seems to me like Chris Nolan was like, who would be good at this small role?
Yeah.
That doesn't strike me as a political statement.
There were rumors also that Page was playing Achilles, which Brad Pitt famously played, which obviously not true. So you had that controversy. The second was that Nyong'o played Helen of Troy. And this is about historical accuracy. Now, because she's black.
It's all made up, right?
Yeah, it's a made up story. But let's take the people who love Gladiator and all these movies. Yeah. Do you think Romans were speaking English with British accents or Australian accents? Like, come on now. Like and by the way, there were dark-skinned people in every one of these societies that we talk about. I just listened to the Rest is History podcast where they these are Oxford, Cambridge history professors broke this down.
I love that.
But even if it weren't true, like, it's a fake story with gods who have magic and they're speaking English with American accents. And in previous versions of this that people love, like Gladiator and the Brad Pitt Troy movie, they have British accents that are really bad, by the way. Jeremy points out that Gladiator takes place in Carthage in Africa. I mean, come on. By the way, a lot of these people have white Jesuses up in their houses. Mm-hmm. So it's like, we're talking about historical accuracy here. That doesn't seem real to me. Now, the third part of this, which I actually find the most interesting contour of the debate, which has emerged more in the past 24 hours, and this is encapsulated by Matt Walsh, who had this like really long take about this, is basically an anti-therapy piece. And this is basically a point that, like, in the portrayal, Matt Damon seems somewhat conflicted, the Odysseus character conflicted by and tortured by his role in the siege of Troy and the war crimes that were committed there. And that conflicted version of Matt Damon is like a reflection of therapy culture, right? So this is their problem with the movie, right? Now, I listened to, actually very fascinating, the woman whose interpretation of the book that Nolan apparently leaned on. I think she spoke at the 92nd Street Y last night, and she actually had the same problem with Nolan's depiction of this, in the sense that she felt like there wasn't enough about the battle scenes and, like, you know, Odysseus and like his warrior mentality and all that. Ben Shapiro, interestingly, had a tweet that was kind of hard to interpret, but my interpretation of it is that he actually liked the more, and he interprets it as a almost Judeo-Christian interpretation of the Odyssey, which is like that the golden rule, which they call like Zeus's rule or something, is the central animating factor of this work. It's very interesting debate that I don't want to sidestep. I do think there's political calculation, obviously, from the Matt Walshes of the world. I do not suspect that's true of this woman who wrote this Odyssey interpretation. But again, this is an oral tradition that has changed many. It's meant to have changed every time somebody told this story. It was eventually written down. If you were to do justice to the entire text, this would be a 10-season arc. So you have to make decisions about your interpretation. I can tell you from my experience, it was very entertaining, and I'm not sure how much these Matt Walshes of the world are spending time on historical accuracy. Like, this is really where they're like, this is really a corner that they've been spending a lot of time on, or are they just deploying it for politics?
Oh, you know? I mean, historical accuracy of a fictional story. I mean, Elon Musk's thing about it, where he's just upset that one character is trans and another one is black, is about as sophisticated as John C. Reilly in Talladega Nights saying, you know, I like to think of my Jesus as wearing a tuxedo t-shirt because I like to party and I like my Jesus to party. I mean, it's about on that level without Elon Musk realizing that he's a joke and John C. Reilly trying to be funny. So,
well, all right, we'll take a break. When we come back, we'll hear from Adam Kinzinger, and we're going to talk about the future of the Democratic Party.
As summer plans heat up, stay fresh from sunup to sundown with Mack Weldon's AirKnit X fabric. It all started with underwear designed with wick moisture to fight odor and give you maximum airflow. Now they're expanding that bestseller to a full line of essentials. Browse the full AirKnit X collection at MackWeldon.com, plus get 20% off your first order of $125 or more with code MAJORITY. The AirKnit X collection is wildly comfortable, from the boxer briefs to the socks. I've never felt more confident and ready to take on the day, knowing how secure and fresh I am. In my opinion, Mack Weldon far exceeds other brands I've used before. Mack Weldon's AirKnit X fabric is a summer staple. Their lighter fabric is fused with nylon mesh for maximum airflow, and your summer rotation is covered, even the sweatiest parts. The whole collection started as underwear, boxer briefs, trunks, and those types of things, and now it includes undershirts, t-shirts, polos, and socks. And look, this summer, add pieces built to last. They make quality clothing that holds up longer than one rough season. Their designs balance classic pieces with updated details to keep you looking sharp, easy to style, and versatile looks that you don't have to think about. Mack Weldon is effortless by design. Mack Weldon clothes are designed to fit your style and the demands of modern life. So for over 10 years, they've designed timeless, innovative menswear to help you move through the day with confidence, even if you're just hanging in your underwear. Don't sweat the heat this summer. Feel as effortlessly cool as you look with Mack Weldon. Go to MackWeldon.com and get 20% off your first order of $125 or more with the promo code MAJORITY. That's MackWeldon.com, code MAJORITY. I don't know if you've ever had this happen to you, but when I was first moving into this new apartment here, I bought a bunch of different stuff. I would go online, I would purchase something, The reviews would be awesome. The photos look great. And then you get something and you're like, wait, this isn't what I bought. This happened to me not too long ago, multiple times. Quality's off. Things don't look the way that they looked in the photos. This is why I had wished at the time I knew about dupe.com and their new research for me tool. And so for a lot of subsequent purchases, I'd used dupe.com, and their research for me tool. And it's amazing. No ads at top, no sponsored best picks that, people paid for. They just walk you through the options. What I really like is it's real sources from real people. They filtered out sponsored links and recommendations, and they just give you a straight answer. You also get a full breakdown, features, specs, pricing. My favorite part is it tells you what not to buy, which obviously can save you a lot of money and make things, easier and less expensive for you. So if it takes research to buy it, let Dupe do it for you. Stop wasting time comparing options. Just go to dupe.com and tell it what you're looking for. That's dupe.com to finally feel confident about what to buy.
All right. We are joined by former Representative Adam Kinzinger. He is a retired Air Force lieutenant colonel. He flew combat missions in Iraq and Afghanistan, served 12 years in Congress as a Republican, voted to impeach Donald Trump, and served on the January 6th committee. You can catch him regularly on CNN or at his Substack or right now with us. Adam, how you doing, man? Good to see you.
Good, man. What's going on? How are you?
Oh, everything's fine. Nothing at all is awry. Things are great. We tend to, when guests come on, what we do is we're just sort of try to talk to them about whatever we were going to talk about in that segment of the show anyway. And you having an interesting perspective makes you an interesting person to talk about sort of the DSA, where's the party going, stuff with. So I was thinking we're going to get into that, if that's cool with you.
Yeah, that's fine. I mean, we'll see if we get to stir the pot here a little bit. I'm sure.
Probably so. Ravi, go ahead.
So Adam, I don't think we know each other, but I'm the general guy who's very alarmed by what I view, and I guess they're starting to self-identify this as a Democratic Tea Party, and you've had the experience of dealing with both MAGA and the Tea Party within your own party. So let's use that frame as we go through a couple of news items here. One here is the progressive streamer David Pakman criticized the college Democrats who just invited Hassan Piker to speak, who apparently showed up in a Mao outfit, and then they barred Destiny, the sort of more critical, more centrist streamer from the college Dems gathering. This is what Pakman had to say.
The Democratic Party is showing the early signs of the same disease that destroyed the Republican Party. Republicans, back in 2010, their leaders, laughed at the Tea Party. The left and Democrats can't make the same mistake. There is a small group of far left extremists gaining influence inside youth groups and party organizations. There was a college Democrats convention, which I was actually invited to participate in, and I couldn't make it. Hassan Piker was dressed like Mao, and I guess Destiny tried to show up, and he was banned from entering allegedly because the Mao-dressed Piker didn't want him there. Republicans are going to put these clips everywhere. People seem crazy when they see this stuff, and they are going to abolish the police and abolish borders and abolish prisons and play them on a loop for 6 months. Democrats must act now and intelligently. The centrists don't really do anything, make very milquetoast fringe suggestions that you don't even really push for. Not working, okay? This other thing of end everything, it's a sort of destructive accelerationism, that's also not going to work. So
okay, to tee you up for this, Adam, Ravi's very concerned about all this, and for me, the jury is out. I'm not sure. So I'm really interested to hear from you, like Ravi said, as somebody who sort of lived through Tea Party and then that leading into MAGA, and how you're viewing all of this.
Yeah, first off, Destiny's one of your guys' best speakers, being Democrats. I mean, this guy crushes anybody he talks to. I've done his show a couple times. Very good. Why you would ban him, besides the fact that he's kind of against extremism, I say you generically to whoever
Sure.
did it, but that's insane. Look, I'm very concerned about what's happening to the Democratic Party on this front because look, I lived this with the GOP. So in 2010, what it started out as is, the Tea Party had 20,000 people showing up to rallies. What it really was just kind of ticked off Republicans that, took this label of Tea Party. And then eventually that Tea Party slimmed itself down to the craziest people, but they kept the same mantra. And I spent my entire time in Congress fighting the far right. That was like my whole reason of existing. And we lost. And what happened is there was this idea that if you embrace them, if you just embrace them, you can turn them into you. And that's not what happens. It's like, honestly, it's like cancer in a body. If you have a couple of cancer cells, the good cells are not going to overwhelm the cancer cells. The cancer cells metastasize. Now, that doesn't mean you don't take the energy that people bring. But if it means like you now start adapting or tolerating things like showing up in a mouth, like what? Like that is how you destroy your party. And the reason I'm so worried about this is because I'm scared to death of Republicans winning again. And I'm going to tell you, if this Mao dress lookalike thing becomes what the Democratic Party is seen as, not even what it is, what it's seen as, you're going to lose to Republicans every time. Every time.
Well, what's interesting here is that, people, when they talk about Piker, try to minimize like his influence. And I think you saw this on the right, where a lot of people who seemed like fringe characters on the internet became central to the party. But we're already seeing this evidence, whether it's Abdul al-Sayed actively campaigning with Piker, Chevalier in New York, Ilhan Omar, more and more, even AOC went on his stream a long time ago. And you also have prominent centrist podcasters who, and even writers like Ezra Klein, who have said, hey, this guy has to be part of the conversation. But what I find interesting is that he's tagged as progressive, but he's not just showing up at him in a Mao outfit. This is what he had to say about Mao. And he's talking about his trip to China in this context, by the way. This is him talking about it.
I got stopped by a cop who thought I was like making fun of Mao Zedong, which I never would and never will. Mao Zedong is a one of the great leaders of this world, okay? A man who changed the entire universe, the entire planet. Okay? For real, yes. I mean, there was a lot of fucking excesses, let's be real, but the People's Republic of China would not exist without Mao Zedong.
So this is the leader of the Democratic Party. I don't want to overstate it. The guy also this week, and I'm not making this up, put a 9/12 poster behind him and hung it up, that he's now streaming with the 9/12 poster behind him. This is the guy who said America deserved 9/11, was given a chance. So he could be doing it ironically, whatever, but he said the U.S. deserved 9/11 and then doubled down on it when asked by John Favreau on Pod Save America. This is a guy our very likely nominee for the U.S. Senate in Michigan campaigned with and said very positive things about while campaigning. Tell me why I shouldn't be alarmed by this.
I mean, you should be. And look, here's the good news, though, is you guys are talking about this, and that's what's important. Democrats do not have to go down the Republican path. And you'll have some people that say, well, look, Republicans became extremists and they won. They did. Can't argue with that. They also are destroying this country. They've done an intense amount of damage. And by the way, I think if the Democrats play their cards right, the Republicans will cease to be a serious party for a few decades, because I think there's going to be a lot of anger against them. But when you have people that you embrace, I mean, again, nobody can stop somebody like Hassan Piker from calling himself a Democrat and saying what he says. That's fine. The key, though, is do you want to be painted with that communist brush? Look, I mean, Republicans are out there calling every Democratic communist. It's insane. That's the dumbest attack line. But if you feed them more and more, what you're going to get is not, your average voter out there saying, I like Republicans now. You're going to get your average voter out there saying, I hate everybody. I hate them all. But compared to Chairman Mao and that kind of group, by the way, he said Mao did a lot of good things. There's a lot of people that died because of Chairman Mao. That's like almost saying how great of a leader Stalin was. And so, look, again, Democrats, don't be disheartened. You haven't gone down this path, but as somebody that went down this path with the Republican Party, this leads to nowhere good. Be a big tent. Have very solid, strong progressives. Allow some moderates to come in, right? You don't have to agree on everything. This idea that we all have to now agree on everything, or we can, like, that's how you create a minority party, is you create a litmus test for every frickin' issue that exists out there. Like, we're not somehow able to think on our own. My wife and I don't agree on about 50% of things, but we have a fantastic marriage. That's what life is. Life is not sitting around pining for the good old days of communism, which, by the way, has failed in every case. Every case. And the only reason that China has grown was because they implemented some capitalism into their communism and allowed people to have a little bit of a voice, and then use, of course, technology to control people.
I also think that there's an important opportunity here to recognize that the right wing has within it a much larger sort of paid podcast verse world that has, and that's what I see developing that's scary, right? Is that, like, the Ben Shapiro's, the Matt Walsh's of the world, like, they have a literal vested financial interest in stoking things and making things get more extreme. And that's sort of where it feels to me like Hassan Piker lives, is in the left version of that. Whereas if you look at somebody who's definitely very progressive and who many people would argue is extreme, somebody like AOC, but nobody looks at AOC and says she is dangerous and she might ruin the country, and she if she were in any level of power, she would throw people into prisons and be, you know, I don't in any way, and I'm pretty progressive, so maybe I'm biased, but I don't get that vibe at all. Whereas, so I feel like maybe that's where we have to be careful, is like the people who have a vested interest in anger and hatred are probably the ones to be most worried about.
They're learning from the right. The key is there's a ton of money in this.
Right.
You can become rich as balls if you just like create, like, I'm a communist, or I'm basically a Nazi or whatever, and you make everybody angry and you create division. There's a ton of money in it, guys. It's the fastest way to be famous and rich, but it destroys us, and that money will be worth nothing someday. But here's a key point is, look, when you think of moderates, or you think of kind of traditional Democrats, for an example, the initial reaction is like soft, like meebly, like, oh, there's some good stuff over here and some good stuff over here, and everybody, you're right, like that's got to stop. We need angry but people but vision painting people that can see an optimistic future. All of this isn't about just destroying our enemies. It's about living in a better country. So whether you're a moderate or a kind of traditional progressive, show the anger you have, but not at somebody. It's on behalf of people, on behalf of the American people. Show your willingness to fight. But unlike Trump, you're not punching down to people that are helpless. You're punching up against power because, and this is the key, you foresee a country where people can have different viewpoints and live together, where we can send anybody that wants to go to college, or anybody that wants to get a job, and everybody has access to healthcare. All that stuff, paint that out in the future. Tie the optimism to the fact that you can be angry at what's happening to people today. But if we get trapped in this, the reason Donald Trump got elected, he didn't intend to win, by the way, in 2016. He just happened to be in front of this wave of people that wanted to destroy the system. I think there's a wave right now of people that want to fix the system, but you'll never see it until somebody captured that wave and it's already passed. And so I fear that some on the left are learning the Trump thing 10 years too late. Maybe it would have worked 10 years ago. America's ready to be past, I think, all this divisive extremism.
Well, I think, like, you know, I know we have a couple more minutes with you. Maybe I'll leave you with this: is what's interesting and I think challenging. I don't want to oversimplify how we get out of this. Is what's also true of what's going on the left and what you experience is that the young people in some ways are more extreme than the older generations, and that's not new in some ways. But what I hear a lot is we need to listen to the young people, is what I often hear. And what I see is often that it's pandering to young people. And I know there's a diversity of views of young people, but as you see on the right, I forget this guy's name who's running for governor of Florida, but he's young and he's kind of a mascot for where the right wing has gone. What I say to people, and maybe you have some wisdom here of how you tried to do this, is you can inspire young people while also not pandering to them. Right. Part of inspiring people is to challenge them. Obama did that to me when I was a young person. Like, he challenged us, but he also inspired me. And I'm curious if you have any experience trying to do this on the right.
Yeah, this is important. So it's listen to young people, yes, and lead young people. I mean, honestly, if we have a bunch of theoretically 16 to 19-year-olds run this country, we're going to run off a cliff. I was 16 to 19 years old myself, okay? I thought I knew everything. I thought I was the most brilliant person there was. And interestingly, I was far more conservative than I am today, because as I grew up, I started to see all different viewpoints and got more compassion. Everybody changes from that age. So it's listen to them, harness that energy. We need it. You always need kind of a young populace with that energy, but also lead and inspire them, show them what they maybe haven't had the life experience of seeing, right? Like understanding that we lived in a, you and I, all three of us here have experienced a world where people used to actually get along decently. Yeah. That's what I think the key is. We again, with the social media economy, we kind of see what people are saying and then we reflect it back to them because there's a lot of money in it, and we've lost the art of persuasion. And now AI makes it worse because all AI does is reflect back to us what we've already said before. So that's key. I think the people that can harness leadership, inspire people like Obama did, I think they're actually going to be the ones that win elections and change this country.
Adam, next time we'll have you on for the whole hour.
Yeah.
And in the meantime, before you go, let people know where they can find you.
Yeah, just go to adamkinzinger.com. That's the Substack, and then of course I'm on all the socials too much sometimes. So, and and I got a YouTube. That's hop on that. That's good too. Just Google it or YouTube it, whatever, you'll find it.
Thanks for everything you're doing, man. Good to see you.
Yeah, you too. Thanks, guys. Yep.
All right.
Should we one for us?
Yeah, you have a big week.
You do, man. I don't know if you're comfortable sharing it. No, okay.
Not yet. But I assume you can.
Yeah, I mean, I've been pretty open about it. I had a crazy week, so I made a somewhat last minute decision to go to Costa Rica to surf, and I booked a 2-week stay in Costa Rica. Flew on Saturday, went out for a surf on Sunday morning. Basically, my first one since I dislocated my shoulder in December. And then was riding, like, it was bigger conditions than I was used to, with a much sort of wider impact zone. So I thought I had made it what we call out the back, which means behind the waves. But then a big wave was appearing on the horizon that looked like it was going to crash pretty far out. So I tried to make my way behind it, mistimed it, and was guiding a board over the waves. Like sometimes I'll swim with one arm, guide the board over the other arm. And I mistimed it and hyperextended my arm all the way back because the wave crashed on my arm. And then I was on the back of no pain, but I immediately realized something was wrong. I'm at this point, the wave's behind me. I'm looking at my arm. It looks like Popeye. But it doesn't hurt. And I'm like, oh, something's wrong here. So long story short, I paddle in, I go to the doctor. And there's a test they do called the hook test that immediately confirmed that I had severed the tendon in my bicep, which is a very common injury for NFL linemen. And it's a 4 to 6 month injury after surgery. So immediately I hopped on a plane, back to New York the next day, even though I was planning to stay 2 weeks. Our healthcare system's so crazy that I did not wait for insurance to greenlight the MRI. So I paid for it out of my pocket, which actually was only a couple $100, which is probably what I paid with deductible anyway. Went to NYU today, found a surgeon who's going to operate tomorrow. So, job number one was to get this done as quickly as possible the surgery.
I've heard with that injury, it's really important to get it done quickly.
2 weeks is the window.
Yeah.
And so basically I'm now viewing this as like, I need a series of one win after another. That's what I've learned from these recoveries. This is now the third one. So my number one job was on the same arm, by the way, within 18 months. My number one job now is to do this, right? Which is to get back here and get the surgery done as fast as possible. This was faster than I imagined. And so tomorrow, first surgery of my life tomorrow.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I will not be on the show next week, unfortunately, because that's when I have my follow-up visit. So
we'll figure it out. You'll be fine. I'll tell you what, from talking to you, you have a spectacular perspective about doing this. I have a tendency when I get hurt and can't play my sport or work out, I have a tendency to get really angry and kind of
it's definitely my reptilian response. You almost get annoyed. This would happen the other ones. I get annoyed at people around me who are doing those things. Yes. And then I get bitchy with them doing the things I can't do. And that I vowed to avoid this time around.
Well, but you have like a good plan to stay active. And that's what happens to me is like, it'll make me less active. And then if I'm not physically active, I'm more difficult to deal with. And one thing I have figured out is that, because you and I are both, athletes in our 40s, is that the reason I like fitness for me, it has two purposes anymore. One is just it's good for my mental health to move my body, and two, I work out so that I can play my sport. And not like a little bit so that I can play my sport well, but honestly, at this point, it is mostly so that I can continue to play. It's like my workouts went from like a few years ago, they were like, okay, I want to have abs this summer and stuff like that, to like now it's, no, I need to do this every day because I need this thing to be flexible so that I can do this motion and not injure. And so that is a really big now, I don't know that there's anything you could have done to prevent this.
I could have not tried to guide the board the way I did. But it wasn't like anybody ever told me that was like a reckless thing to do. Now I've learned through experience. And it was like a freak accident. I actually have no regrets obviously if I could have avoided that way of now knowing about it, but it wasn't like, there wasn't any mindset, like, it's not like when I was riding a motorcycle during the last one where like, it's easy to be like, how many times have I been told not to ride a motorcycle? Right. Surfing is enjoyable. It's fun. And it is not something I'll stop, nor has anybody ever made an argument that seems remotely persuasive for me to stop. And it was a freak accident. It's fine. I'll deal with it. The one thing that I think you also have that I have that I just need to deal with is that like exercise to me is critical for my mental health. Yeah. And this next month, especially when I can't really do anything, is just going to be a challenge. And I have to deal with it. Yeah.
Well, I think I mentioned to you, one person you can get advice from on the injury is JD Schulten, who people will recognize because JD, state rep in Iowa, has been on the show multiple times. JD, who's a former pro pitcher, went last October with me and played for my team, the Kansas City Hustlers, our like men's amateur team, and we played in a baseball tournament that we play in every year in Arizona, and it was really fun. And JD's a great pitcher, but it was also, he's been exclusively a pitcher for many years, and it was like a fun up. He had just retired from professional baseball, and he was going to come down, pitch for us, and get to actually hit. And he, of course, because he's a super athlete, was one of our best hitters. And then like fourth game, popped his bicep swinging a bat because he hadn't done it in so many years. And then he had to go in, and I saw where he just got back to pitching in amateur ball and is enjoying it. But, it took him a long time to recover, and he's older than us, but is JD Schulten. So, I would consult with JD. He may have some good advice.
Yeah, well, it's good timing because I got my book coming out in September, so I'm just throwing myself into that. And for the audience, if you feel bad for me, what you could do is go out there and pre-order the Invisible List wherever you get your books. That's basically what I'm focused on as a metric now, as opposed to getting out there and exercising, is just getting as many people to know about this book as possible. It's all about this kind of approach, ironically, of like me doing hobbies and learning new things late into life. And the cool thing is, if you're in this audience and you want to pre-order it, you can send a receipt to alexis@orangeboatmedia.com. And I enroll you in this group called The Posse, which we now have about 100 members, who are people who pre-ordered the book and who are dedicating themselves to following the approach in the book. And you get access to all kinds of stuff, like early access to tickets for a retreat I'm doing in Costa Rica, an invite to the New York City launch party, and workshops that I'm doing. Like I did our first workshop last week for members. So so pre-order The Invisible List wherever you get your books. You could send your receipt to alexis@orangeboatmedia.com. It's a good way to do me a solid. It's a very tragic moment in my life. You know? So.
I know that we probably aren't ready to release dates yet, but I think we can tell the audience that you and I are also going to do a couple of events for your book. So people,
KC, and I meant to ask you about this. I'd love to do St. Louis again if we can make it work, but I loved going out there.
I think we have an email thread somewhere.
I got to go dig it back up. But I would love to go back out there. Yeah. Love the people. Love that bookstore.
Yeah. I know we're at a minimum doing KC and hopefully doing St. Louis too. All right. Yeah. Go pre-order the book. All right. Thanks everybody. You can follow Ravi everywhere at Ravi M. Gupta. You can follow me everywhere at Jason Kander. Please leave a 5-star review. Thank you to the Midas Mighty. And remember, we all have a platform. Make sure to use yours today.